and it is absolutely amazing. I'm going to start talking. You get it queued up, and if we do, I'm going to take a pause, and we'll just take a break and watch it. If you don't, then I'll just keep going. But let me give you a little background about myself, because I'm going to be talking about that altar right now before we're rebuilding the wall. It's just amazing how God pulls these things together. And yeah, you were up early in the morning. Well, I was up until 1:30 last night rewriting what I was going to say. So God speaks. But like most of you, I was born at a very early age and was raised in a loving, supportive home with parents who really did do their best to practice what they taught me. And I am eternally grateful for that example that they gave me. But I was raised Christian Science, whose optimistic, positive, mental perspective may be admirable, but it does not teach an orthodox view of Christianity. And even though I attended Sunday school all the way through the age of 14, I never understood what the gospel of Jesus Christ was. It was just, I don't know how you can go to Sunday school for so many years and never get that. And my spiritual travels took me briefly to Unitarian Universalism, then to Eastern religions, listening to swamis from India, Hinduism, eventually Transcendental Meditation, Hatha Yoga, Kriya Yoga. And interesting that these spiritual travels had a positive influence on my life, and by that I mean they all contributed to my understanding of various worldviews. But these travels did not solve the deep-rooted struggle that I had in my heart. I needed something. I needed someone to bring an inner peace which I lacked. And that all changed dramatically on the first Friday of 1973. Interesting, in the same Musselman Hall dormitory that Joe met the Lord several years later. But I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ on the campus of Kent State University. I received forgiveness of my sins, past, present, and future. And I received a heartfelt peace that literally surpasses my understanding. The deep-rooted tearing in my heart was eliminated, and it has never returned. Now, don't misunderstand me. I still struggle with things, but I don't struggle with the separation that I felt in the deepest levels of my heart. And God has replaced that deep-rooted struggle with a peace that continues to literally transform my life. It continues to. Candidly, I struggle to explain this inner peace. It is literally beyond my understanding. It is amazing what I've experienced. The first point I want to make, I got 3 points, is I wanted to serve God. As a newborn Christian, I was fortunate to meet other Christians who took their relationship with Jesus Christ very seriously. We were all transformed out of darkness into light, and we all wanted to walk with God and serve Him. And this gospel of Jesus was far too important to ignore. And I was encouraged to consider ministry, full-time ministry, if I was serious about serving Jesus. And I was serious about serving Jesus. I read the Bible daily. I read many books about the Bible. I was mentored by several pastors. I studied, I prayed, I served in a local church. I engaged with people at Kent State. And then upon graduation, at my job within the community. And I didn't wear Christianity on my sleeve per se, but I did attempt to put my faith into practice, living honestly, being genuine, earning an opportunity to share my discovery of a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And it wasn't anything weird or contrived. It was just simply living with the genuineness that my parents had modeled to me. They hadn't modeled Christianity to me, but they did model a genuineness that I am so grateful for. I practiced what I believed, and I did what I said. In 1981, I was invited to join our church's leadership team as one of the pastors. We already had 2 pastors, Steve being one of those, and I was ordained as the 3rd pastor of our church, and I was really honored to be commissioned to serve God in this way. But my second point is, as I continued to walk with God and seek Him, I constantly wanted to engage with people in the marketplace, in the world. I wasn't using the word marketplace. I was just engaging with people in life and in the world. And even to this day, I feel most comfortable walking out my Christianity as a truth seeker, as someone on a journey that others may also be on. And in 1986, 5 years after being ordained, I stepped out of vocational ministry and I devoted my life to serving God in business by eventually becoming a fiduciary wealth manager. I wasn't alone. As we've been studying, and learning and discussing, the Bible has a cast of many influential people used by God who are not vocational ministers. And, let me just consider a few. I'm going to skip my section on the minor prophets because you just did that so well, Tom. But let me just stop me when I just mention somebody that is vocationally supported as a minister, okay? Let's just start in the Old Testament. Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, Noah, Job, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua, Samuel. Stop me. There's one. We got one, okay. Saul, Jonathan, David, Solomon. No? But how about Elijah and Elisha? Okay, I got some more. By the way, I just pulled them out. This is not an exhaustive list, but Ruth. I think 4 of the major prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, were vocationally supported in that role, but not Daniel. We know he was a scholar and advisor to Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar. The 12 minor prophets, I think 9 of them were probably vocationally supported in their role, but Amos was a grower of sycamore figs and a shepherd, and Obadiah, there's 12 people in the Bible named Obadiah. They don't really know who to attribute the writing of that book to. And Haggai, he was, I think, a 70-year-old retiree. I mean, I don't know what he retired from, but the guy was very prophetic, and I don't know exactly what he did when he was younger. You have Josiah, the king of Judah, Esther, a beautiful, beautiful Jewish wife of a Persian king, Ahasuerus, and her cousin Mordecai. Look at the risk that those people took. I mean, they put their lives at real risk in an attempt to persuade a king to retract in order to annihilate the Jews in Persia. I mean, he's talking about standing in the gap. We've talked about Nehemiah, a cupbearer to a Persian king, Artaxerxes, Artaxerxes, I think is how you say it. And Ezra, we've talked about that. Tom talked about that. Let's move into the New Testament. And those guys were supported. I mean, Ezra was vocationally supported in that role. But New Testament, yeah, Zacharias and Elizabeth, I mean, they were in a priestly line. I mean, he received a vision right before the presence of God. John the Baptist, I never thought about that. I don't know. He might have been supported. He was a son of a priest proclaiming something. He said some pretty mighty stuff. I don't know where he got his goods resources from. He could have been supported somehow. But Joseph and Mary certainly weren't. The Magi, I think they were professional ministers, but the shepherds weren't. The 12 apostles weren't, but then were eventually as they were moving the church forward after the resurrection. Paul and Timothy were, although Paul worked part-time. Luke, a physician. Cornelius, a Roman centurion. Joseph of Arimathea, he was a rich member of the Sanhedrin, which was more of a judge. I don't know that he was a priest. There were some priests in the Sanhedrin, but he's certainly not playing the role of a judge. But what a mix of people engaged in making history for God and for his kingdom. And that's what the mix that we have here, and that's the mix that we go back home to and we're engaged with. So here's my third point. Those of you that are vocational ministers, you play a critical role so that the roughly 95% of non-vocational ministers stay within the boundaries of orthodox biblical truth. History is full of examples of cults and false religions that people have not stayed within the bounds of orthodoxy. And the Bible and history is full of people who may have started well but didn't particularly finish well. I think we all want to finish well. So for a moment now, I'm not going to talk about rebuilding the temple. I'm going to talk about that altar. I want to talk about, not theology, I want to talk about our daily behavior now, okay? Let's just start there. Because our behavior is what the world sees. Our behavior is how much of the world evaluates Christianity. You with me on that? So, What if you are in the marketplace, and let's say you're in the construction business, okay? I'm going to give one example, but probably all of you could give many similar. So the foundation has been laid. It's in, it's down. The footer tile is there. The inspector comes by, and he says, yep, you've done everything according to the rules. Go ahead, move on. And what do you move on? You're supposed to then lay in the gravel and then put in the back the dirt and the clay. You know, you got the footer tile that'll keep the basement dry and everything. But the inspector's gone. Rather than just laying down the gravel first, and as the code requires, it's, why don't we just shove this dirt and clay back in there? No one's going to notice. I mean, at least not for 15 years. Maybe the basement will be damp because the footer tile isn't working, but I'm long gone. No one will ever know. I mean, I'm out of here. I mean, that happens all the time. The inspector's gone, and the contractor cuts a corner. How about if you're an internet provider? What if we were to sell this personal data in order to make some extra money? Most people won't know we've done that. That's going on today, and there's a lot of issues that we're facing with these security issues on that now. How about politicians? Well, let's not so much focus on what's sustainable. Let's promise to provide more and more and more in order to get elected and reelected, even if we have to borrow this money. I mean, like borrowing like $23 trillion of national debt today. That's $73,000 per person in the United States. That's $187,000 per taxpayer. I mean, the history is full of countries that have failed because the politicians and people are not living within the means of the government resources. I'm talking about 23 trillion. How big is a trillion? I mean, we talk about million, and then we talk about a billion. Now we're talking about trillion as if it's kind of like a million. But so let me just work with me here. Does anyone know how long a million seconds is? It's about 11 days. A million seconds, 11 days. Well, how long is a billion seconds? 32 years. What if I change that B to a T? How long is a trillion seconds? Just under 32,000 years. I mean, that's the magnitude as we've been just changing the first letter of those words, and we're now talking about $23 trillion in debt. And the burden we've placed on our children and grandchildren it's criminal. It really is. And we've got people running now saying we should forgive all student college loan debt, and we should forgive all this. These are politicians that should be paying down the debt and not adding more. That's an unsustainable, it won't work. And they're only going to get in office if people vote for that because that's what they want. But the level of financial, I'm speaking as a wealth manager, that's my career. There's a level of financial illiteracy that is just dangerous, dangerous. How about medical doctors now? I'm just dealing with personal behavior down. Are we preserving life or are we boarding life? Are we having those difficult discussions addressing poor behavior that leads to poor health, or are we simply prescribing pills? I mean, these are issues that medical doctors need to really wrestle with. It's not easy to have those tough discussions. How about judges? Are they providing colorblind justice, or are they playing favorites? How about employers? Do employers pay their employees as little as possible, or do they share some of the company's financial success with reasonable compensation and benefits? Court, you were describing how you are sharing with your employees the success of their company, and that is a model of good behavior. This is the behavior that people in the world see. How about gifted artists and performers? This is why I wanted that Kanye West video. Do you have a sense of what he's doing right now? Bringing in 15,000 millennials, many of which have never even gone to church, and he is singing about Jesus the King. I mean, it is like amazing what he's doing. And he was Father Jonathan Morris. Now he's a spiritual advisor. He stepped out of the priesthood, but Fox News contributor Jonathan was doing an expose that we were going to watch there, and he says, I think it's I think it's real. I mean, he sees something going on there, and you're interviewing people that are coming and going in this thing, and some people say, no, it's just music, and other people saying people are coming to Jesus. So you got people going to the same event, and some it's not even impacting. They're just there, listening to this guy singing about Jesus as King, and there's others that are being introduced to Jesus. Facing these huge crowds with their enthusiastic devotion, Kanye said he was tempted to start a church. It's in the interview. If you try to look it up sometime. But fortunately, he was encouraged to work in concert with the church. Kanye is an example of a marketplace gifted, and by the way, I don't like rap, but there's 15,000 people that go to concert after concert that love that music, and they're hearing about Jesus. Kanye needs to be in relationship with Orthodox Christian leaders who will help him walk circumspectly with God as he faces these enormous opportunities, coupled with enormous temptations, as he's sharing the gospel with many people who have never attended a church. By the way, I've had a chance to meet Fox News contributor Jonathan Morris. I expect to have breakfast with him this January, and I'm hoping to learn more from him. And there's a guy that he himself, because of some of the constraints of being a Catholic priest, he now has gotten permission, he stepped out of the priesthood. And I'm curious to see what he is now seeing in this mixture of both vocational ministry and non-vocational ministry and the collaboration. So I'm hoping to get some time with him in January. So I'm talking about the behavior of marketplace. Let me just talk about, do you have it there? This would be, it is just, let's see if it goes. Hit play. I don't know how you hit play. There it is. You just found it. Okay. You keep playing with it, and if it starts, I'll stop talking. So I'm talking about behavior of marketplace people, and this is what the world's viewing. Let me talk a little bit about what it means to be a wealth manager. This is stuff I've had to wrestle with now. So this is, again, just a little bit of insight. So as fiduciary wealth managers, we recommend only what we believe to be best for the client 100% of the time by telling them what they need to know, even when they may not want to hear it. I talk about this financial illiteracy, the mistakes we made. We got emotions. It's not just intellect. We got emotions that get in the way. We avoid every conflict of interest that we possibly can. We avoid any commissions from the sale of anything that we might offer, and we provide full transparency. That doesn't mean that we're going to be predicting what the market's doing and trying to, somehow have this in on God that somehow prophetically tells them how they should put their money. We're partnering them with other businesses all over the world. In fact, our portfolio is in 42 countries all over the world. And these are people that are trying to provide goods and services, and they're going to be subject to making mistakes as well. But that's what we do when you invest. We could do it transparently, or we could do what most financial advisors do. We just recommend things, we earn high commissions, and just kind of let the buyer beware. Well, that's not the role we're playing. Most financial advisors do not legally act as a fiduciary for their clients. They are primarily salespeople, and most consumers don't realize that. This was a very, very challenging transition because I used to be fully licensed to sell all those things, and I turned all of that in and went to a fee-only approach. But my Christianity required me to do that in my vocation. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't make us perfect. It makes us, at least, though, an attempt to put our faith into action. And you don't have to be a Christian to be a fiduciary, by the way. But as Christians, I think we need to be fiduciaries wherever possible. The temptations and challenges that we all face every day in our vocations and in our communities, those temptations are enormous. Successful people face enormous temptations, and people who are struggling to survive face the same temptations. The human condition is that left to our own devices, we tend to act selfishly and we tend to sin. That's the human condition. God wants us to overcome temptations and prevail, not to simply hide and survive. You with me on that? We must be in relationship with God and with each other believers who are also walking with God. We must be in relationship with vocational ministers who are caring for our souls and help keep us accountable. I could never have given the discourse that Steve gave yesterday morning, that Tom, you just gave right now. Yes, I was ordained, and yes, I've studied the Bible, but I don't have the depth of what you guys have. I'm focusing on so many other things that the marketplace is demanding of me right now. And boy, do I need people like you and my pastor, Tom Bloom, at Community Vineyard Church to help me stay the course and remain orthodox. My career as a non-church supported evangelist, that's my role. I'm part of the fivefold ministry. That opens doors for me to interact with people I likely would never have met as a vocational minister. And vocational ministers have opportunities to shepherd people into their high callings of God, and you're meeting people that I'll never meet. It's both and. In summary, fact, all believers are called as ambassadors of Jesus Christ. Fact, all believers are called to build God's kingdom, not our own personal fiefdoms. Fact, 95% of Christians are not vocationally supported by the church. Fact, the church has an opportunity. It has a responsibility to equip and prepare people to represent God well as ambassadors of Jesus Monday through Saturday. Fact, vocational ministers must equip believers under their care for effective ministry by providing biblical meat, nourishment, counsel, and accountability. Boy, it's amazing how God has wired this thing together, huh? The unity of John 17, I mean, that is just like astounding. So, in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with an action item. I'm going to pose 3 questions for you, and you'll be getting this in writing, so you won't be able to write it all down. You'll get it. Peter's capturing all this, and he'll give that to you at the end. Question number 1. Just really pray about this. 1, is the church's primary job to recruit volunteers for various church functions, or is its primary job to prepare its members for successful, effective Christian living in their chosen vocations in a post-Christian culture Monday through Saturday? By the way, I know every church needs dependable volunteers. We wouldn't exist without them. The question is, what is the church's primary function? Volunteer recruitment, or is it member equipping? How do you evaluate your effectiveness as the pastor? Question 2, do growing churches do a better job preparing their people? Do growing churches do a better job of preparing their people for effective living Monday through Saturday than perhaps churches with little or no growth? I got to tell you, this is the one that I'm really wrestling with. I don't know the answer to that one, and I don't want to create a false narrative there, but this has my attention because our church is struggling with some growth issues right now as well. Perhaps being relevant, a church that's relevant Monday through Saturday, is the relevancy that people are seeking and can't wait to get to church in order to get that relevancy, perhaps. This is what I'm kind of like wrestling with our leadership group at our church right now. And question number 3, based on your understanding of the above 2 answers you come up with, does anything need to be changed or improved at church to make it relevant rather than an obligation? Let me close in prayer. Dear Father, thank you for making all of life sacred for all of us. Lord, we pray that you would envision us, equip us, and encourage us to be about your business. In Jesus' name, amen.